Hey everybody, welcome to the Mildly Competitive Podcast. My name is Eric, and today we've got a full crew today. We've got DJ, Casey, Daniel, Trenton, and myself.
Sup, nerds?
Yay!
All right, and today we're going to cover a couple of topics, namely the meta now, in the future, and as well as the new seasons coming up, some results of some of our play tests, and then finally there's a new simulator announcement. That's going to be quite interesting. To start off at the top, we're delayed, so technically this will come out after the current NAIC happened, so we're a little bit behind, but we just wanted to cover a little bit of the results. In this instance, Inteleon Urshifu won the event. I don't think any of us saw that coming, did we?
No, I don't think any of us mentioned Inteleon Urshifu being even a contender.
Although I did play it to a top 8 finish in a tournament like a couple days before.
Then why didn't you say nothing?
It was a secret deck.
Yeah, I watched him play it to a top 8 finish, so that counts for something.
Why didn't you tell us about it?
It was secret.
It was
Why
a
would you
secret.
keep it secret?
Keep it from the team, huh? I see how it is.
Bro,
For
we
all of us
started
that went to
already.
NAIC.
Okay.
We got many teams inside the big team.
The sub team. It's kind of crazy that match though. Not to get super deep into it, Ian Robb versus Cyrus Davis, Inteleon Urshifu versus my boy Arctura Umbreon. Ian Robb got Ian robbed, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. That was unfortunate.
Yeah, that game 3 was something.
That was extremely painful. But in terms of the meta result, I think top 8 we're looking at one Inteleon Urshifu, 2 Gardevoir. One Lost Box, a single Lost Box in top 8 made it.
And of course it faced the Inteleon Urshifu first.
Right, the worst matchup possible. And then 3 Arc Pile decks. 2 Arc Dura Umbreon, and then the Arc Umbreon Flying Pikachu. So it's actually quite a somewhat diverse meta. I didn't think I was going to see nearly as much like different decks than Guardy Lost Box in this top 8.
I didn't think Arceus was going to do as well as it did, but
it showed up.
Yeah.
It showed up in big waves. Yeah, so top 32, lots of Gardevoir. Meta was like, almost 30% Gardevoir, about 20% Lost Box, and then Arc Piles were quite high in number. A lot of people playing Arc. They're starting to see the light. Get that Arc Dura going.
Yeah.
Lost City. I think the secret to that is Lost City. That card is what really shines in those decks.
Lost City is a really good card right now.
And I feel like we weren't too far from our predictions either of kind of what we thought would be the dominant decks going into the event. I think we had like 30% on like Lost Box Guardies. We may be a little bit off on which one would have been 30%, but
It was 25.
I think we had a pretty decent like smattering of what kind of showed up, which was cool to see. Like it's nice to know we could call it a little bit.
Shen Pao, more like Shen Pu, am I right?
Hey, Blue Maridon, we got to see it on stream.
There was a couple Blue Maridon in top as well.
Where was the highest placing one?
12,
12?
actually.
So there was one in top 16?
Kind of like when Maridon first showed up. We had one in top 8 at that event, and then kind of petered out.
That was EUIC, correct?
No. That was a regional, I believe. Yeah, one more Arc line. A super interesting list.
Well, I mean, it's just another. It's Irida without having to use your supporter, right?
True.
And you don't have like a V-star Pokemon anyways.
Well, you would have
you
the
were right,
Palkia.
Trenton. It was EUIC. You're right.
Yeah, but it's the Palkia and the Arceus. I think the Arceus is probably better because it gets you more pieces you need, helps you set up faster.
It's like a different setup, right? So the Arceus lets you get cards you maybe need that are in the deck, but then the Palkia lets you go double Greninja attacks, or like just, I need to get stuff out of the bin. I don't have any more item cards. Might as well just use the V-Star. But in theory, you can just do that with energy retrieval on Arceus. So it's like...
Yeah, does Brex Caliber allow you to attach to non-water Pokemon?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so I could see, using Arceus in matchups where that extra 60 HP, will make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. Plus, just like a straight, clean 200. It's not bad.
Yep. But he wasn't running any belts or anything like that, so it was just 200.
Yeah. But I feel like it's mostly for the setup, not really for the attack in most matchups anyway.
Totally. So yeah, NAIC, super fun watch. Ian Robb, unfortunate, but Arctur putting in good work. Also, one of my favorite decks. Speaking of weird decks that won events, in terms of Telion Urshifu, that's what wasn't considered like a super good deck. Like, it's a totally playable deck, but it's not like top pick meta. And that's where rogue decks and how they kind of have their place in tournaments and in events. It's something that we see come up every now and again, where a weird rogue deck will end up taking down an event or doing really well and then kind of fall off because no one was expecting it. Is this something that we should be looking at in terms of this format going forward, is trying to find these rogue decks that maybe people might have skipped or missed out on? Or should we kind of ignore a lot of the rogue? What do you guys think?
Don't think most of the rogue decks are super good right now. Personally, I don't know if I would really consider Inteleon Urshifu a rogue deck after this event, because it feels like it's pretty hard to counter for Lost Box and Gardevoir, so it might just become like a main deck now.
I think I would challenge that a little bit. I think in terms of Pokemon, how we would probably want to define tiers is going to be like overall representation and then performance. So something like Urshifu and Teleon has a allegedly good matchup against Guardy and Lost Box, but a poor matchup against most else. Like, its Lugia matchup probably sucks. Its Mew matchup is probably abysmal.
Yeah.
And so these are decks that we recognize as tier 1 or 2. Mew or all of them are. So if half the tier 1 field it's going to be doing poor against, I would place that as a rogue strategy still, because while it won, it still had to dodge a lot to get to that point, which is kind of what rogue wants to do. Or maybe even like tier 3 or something. Maybe tier 2. But the numbers that were represented, I think, would put it into a rogue status, because it did exactly what a rogue deck would want to do. It saw what the field was going to be. It made the judgment call and said, screw the rest of it. I'm going to make a path to the first place by trying to eat as many of the Lost Box and Guardian decks as I can.
Yeah.
Which is what it did.
No, I can see that for sure. I think it will still be a good deck on forward, but yeah, it does make sense that it is in a rogue tier, since you do kind of have to hit those favorable matchup.
That also plays a little bit into Alex Szymanski's choice of the deck he played, which was Bird Up, United Wing Bird deck. He
Bird March.
was basically Lost March but birds. And he mentioned on stream, basically he wanted to dodge any Lost Box matchup because he felt like he could beat any other deck with that. And he did a really good run, ended up, his big losses were against the Lost Box decks and then Inteleon Urshifu, because it also eats that deck for breakfast. So and that's the idea, is it worth giving up a likely high percentage meta deck like Lost Box, giving up that matchup, but then beating potentially 60 to 70% of the field?
I think that's probably fine. It really just depends how you want to play. If you want like an all-around good deck, I probably wouldn't go for that. But if you want a deck that has like really good matchups into most stuff and then just has a abysmal matchup into Lost Box and Inteleon Urshifu, I think it's a good play.
I think Szymanski is in a unique position where he doesn't necessarily need to try his hardest at events, in the sense that he's likely already going to get like compete, or he has stuff behind. Like, I don't think he necessarily needs to take like pro level Pokemon as seriously as someone trying to do a Worlds grind or something like that. So this makes sense as a call for him to play a deck that's soft into what will likely be the highest representation of the field, which it wasn't. It was the second highest, but even still, with what probably should have just been like a Gardevoir deck, right? Because Bird probably handles the same thing kind of like how Gardevoir does, but Gardevoir would do it better and more consistently. But Bird's is funnier, which is probably why he picked it. And so I don't necessarily think something like that is a smart call as much as it is a fun call, or a way to make the event more interesting or spicy to you, as opposed to be like, yep, I'll just play, Gardevoir, discard a bunch with Kirlia and went out that way, which he did have a Kirlia engine in the deck. So he was kind of still mostly playing Gardevoir in a way. So I think it's less about him playing something he thinks could win the event as much as he thought it was fun and could do well.
I disagree on principle. I don't think he's the type of player that goes to an event and doesn't plan to win it. In which case, he's going to bring the deck he thinks is the best.
You really think he thinks United Wings is the best deck?
I don't know about that.
I think he thought that he could win the event with it.
The surprise factor is huge. Going back to Rogue, like having that surprise factor.
I don't think he would.
Part.
I don't, and it's possible maybe he has these thoughts recorded somewhere. I don't think he would think the deck that has a bad Lost Box matchup would win an event.
I mean, how many Lost Box were in top 8?
That's irrelevant though, right? Because he wasn't also in top 8.
Yeah, you still have to get to top 8.
What was the percentage of Lost Box in day 2?
Probably close to 20 at least.
Yeah, I think we had the things.
It was 21%. I think going into the event, it doesn't show me the overall though.
I'm assuming it was a little lower than that, but
so day 2 Lost Box was 17%.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think it would be under 15.
Which Guardy led the pack at 22%.
Yeah, so if you're only having to dodge like 15%, that it doesn't feel great, but it doesn't feel terrible.
I think the other idea is he's like on a lock for his world invite, and I'm pretty sure he's third place. In NA.
He had top 16 completely locked up.
Yeah, so it's like in this instance, I think it was more of he wanted to play something that had surprise factor, that had really good matchups. Conceded one matchup, which if he lost, no big deal. He's already got everything covered. If he won, hey, let's go. Meme Bird won the event. It's definitely more of for fun, while still taking it semi-seriously, which that's where a lot of decks in Rogue tier tend to end up. Is it's fun that you can kind of be serious, but is likely not going to win the event.
Although he did win EUIC with like a roguish anti-meta deck as well. So you never know.
It is just his style of play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Rogue an interesting tier for lists like this, because you have a surprise element where you are likely playing something people did not play test against, which gives you matchup knowledge, which is a strong, and if you could take advantage of that, it is a strong tool to have in your belt. But I don't necessarily think it's everything you need in order to win.
Right. I have a question I'd like to ask the council. Like, on your personal play style, would you rather bring in a high competitive event, right? Like we're all chasing our invite coming up this season. Would you bring meta or rogue to a highly competitive event?
It probably depends on what the meta looks like. If it's well defined, then I think you definitely want to play something meta. But coming into a new meta like this, I wouldn't be opposed to playing a rogue deck.
I think it's going to depend on two factors. One, could I find a rogue list that was interesting enough or had enough legs to do something? In which case, I would probably play it. Or two, has a deck firmly solidified itself as the best deck in format? In which case, I would probably play that.
Or a deck that like strictly counters that. Plus, like
it would have to strictly counter that. That's where the rogue element. So it would either have to like strictly counter it. So it'd be kind of like the idea of if everyone's going to play, Lost Box, then I'd probably play Guardy.
Yeah.
Or if everyone's going to play Guardy, I'd probably find whatever the counter for that. So there is an element of like the back and forth, but I think those decks are all going to remain as like the top tier things. Yeah. Whereas with the Rogue, that's specifically going to need to be something that I think, like with what Birds or the Inteleon Urshifu did, has a really specific good matchup, maybe even a couple, and then you just have to dodge some. I wouldn't be comfortable with something like Birds at an event. I would be more comfortable with something like the Inteleon Urshifu after having ground like 500 games out with it.
Yeah, I agree.
It does come down to familiarity with the format as a whole and the meta. I personally try to lean more onto some of the rogue stuff if they tend to be more fun than the meta. But if it's like a fun deck, like Lugia is like back in the just previous format where you had like every tool available with every special energy. Like that was such an interesting deck that was really cool, and everyone played it because it was so good. I really like playing Arctur in that format because it really easily countered that plus other decks.
I've never seen you not play Arctur. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I'm playing that till I can't no more. It's been like 2 years,
I
and I
mean,
will continue to play.
Still looks like a good play.
Totally, and that's where it's like, it's super, because I'm so comfortable with it in comparison to other decks. I want to play something like that versus just picking up the best deck in format and then being behind possibly hundreds of hours of playtesting with that specific deck versus everyone else who may be higher play time with that deck, so they're going to have a higher win rate against people like me.
Yeah, for sure.
I personally prefer. I've got two styles of decks I enjoy playing. Either
Don't say wood. Don't say wood.
either mill. No, I do enjoy some mill. Decks that have infinite energy attachment, so Gardevoir or like the Rain Dance. Any deck that has that kind of effect.
I mean, Lugia sort of does.
Lugia's, yeah, anything that like cheats energy into play, or control, which are the complete polar opposites of play styles. But control doesn't tend to be very good very often, and when it is good, it's really good. So more often than not, I'm playing one of those super heavy cheating stuff into play style of decks.
Man,
So you're more so the kind of deck versus meta or rogue.
Yeah. Something that fits my preference. Which is why back in the day, Archie's Blastoise, you both got to cheat a Pokemon into play and cheat energy into play.
Broken.
Like that's the best card of all time.
Or Junk Hunt Sableye. Back when control was broken.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss it.
You think you miss it.
No, I definitely miss it.
Yeah,
I miss
see,
Pidgeotto control.
we definitely have a lot of experience underneath all of our belts. This is fantastic conversations. My personal preference, probably when I was first into the game, I had a testing group and always played like top of the meta and did really well. And as of recently coming back in, I'm gearing up more towards things that are off meta but have decent matchups. In the top, I would say maybe 40% of decks. I feel like if you choose any deck right now, you're gonna have a bad, lost box matchup just of how quick it is. It's kind of like the aggressive deck of the meta, where it just gets games fast, and you can also play a slower game, like with the Kyogre version. So, but we have cards like Iona now, and it definitely opens up that line of play that you can play something a little off meta, still be competitive. But definitely, I think it goes down to the testing group. So if you are going to do that, find a group of people to test, the top decks against, so you can find out your best 60 for a big tournament, especially with regionals coming up this next season. It's going to be super long days, huge tournament caps, like 1,000+ people. So it's going to be good to bring something you're more comfortable, like Eric was saying, or Daniel, something that's more in their wheelhouse.
And with that, with meta versus rogue, in terms of the meta to play with, what are we thinking that is that the condensed decks to pick from? Because you can't play against every single deck or every single matchup. And it looks like so far it's kind of solidifying as Guardies at top. Like, per all the metrics we've seen in terms of, like, meta, Guardies tier 1. I don't think that's contentious, would anyone say?
It has the best draw engine. That's my opinion. Gardevoir has the best draw engine than any other deck. I mean, Lost Box with Culverus and Flower Selecting, it's a +1, but I guess Guardy's a +1 too, but it also gets value from the discard, opposed to Lost Box gets value from unlocking effects later in the game with the Lost Zone. So,
yeah, I would probably agree. Guardy is up there. And my argument would be most of these like rogue or surprise decks use most of a Guardy shell to come up with their game plan, specifically like the routes and the Curlias and maybe a Gallade or two. And so I think when you have a engine that is pretty universal like that, when you have the shell it can run in already, it's probably one of the best things to be doing.
Yeah, feels just like the good old Zoroark days.
Huh. Well, even not that long ago, Cincino,
Yeah,
or Pidgeotto, like that style of just like you can run it in every deck and it's draw power.
yeah, but those worked with like more a control-ish aspect because they didn't have like a real good energy acceleration or attacker built into them.
To be fair, we did have this effect for quite a while before the or the Curlia came out. Like the Liepard does exist, and it just wasn't played.
Well, yeah, because Curly you can find with Level Ball.
Right.
Yep.
And Curlia can evolve into Gallade. Like the Gallades are, if you're not playing the Glades, there's no reason to be playing the Curlias.
Outside of the Gardevoir deck.
Right. Correct.
And even then, I don't think putting a Gallade in there would necessarily be all that bad. It's just you want to have so many Gardevoirs and like the baby Gardevoir and the Gardevoir EX, so you can't really fit it in.
Right. And like Gardevoir is one of those decks where once it's set up, you are very not likely to miss an attack every turn. Like you're swinging every turn.
Yeah. It's just the only way that Lost Box at the moment can really beat it is you have to just like, because Lost Box is pretty turbo, so you have to basically outpace them in the early turns by a lot and just not let them set up. Otherwise, you're dead.
Yeah, easy out to Manaphy. Hope they prize it, and then just start punching those Curlias to death.
Yeah.
So in terms of the next deck, there's a lot of possible options that can be like the second best deck, right? So we've got Lugia, both versions, colorless, and also the single strike.
Which one was more played at NAIC? Did they separate them?
I think it was Rapid Strike.
I believe it was Rapid Strike. I don't believe they separated it.
Single strike.
Yeah,
that's the one. The striky one. The punchy one. But there was in the top 32, there was a colorless build.
Yeah.
And a single strike build.
Okay.
So I think it was relatively split.
The single strike one was the one that got top 8.
I believe that is correct. Let me double check really quick here.
So as far as
we don't have the list.
As far as the second best deck's concerned, is it not just Lost Box?
Yeah, it's the Lost Box engine in whatever Lost Box shell you want to run.
Right.
Yeah.
True, but Arceus put in a lot of work. Arceus put in a lot of work.
I don't know if we can say if it's for sure Lost Box.
I think I can. And the reason being is because there are so many variations you need to test against, it puts you in a weird position with other decks that aren't Lost Box to have to like consider which versions of the deck you want to beat against. And if you ever stumble against a Lost Box, you're probably gonna die.
Yeah, that's fair. It really consistently sets up.
Yeah, I'd say that it's close. It's probably Lost Box is second, but the kind of the next couple below it are really close to it.
Yeah, I'd say probably the Arceus, couple of the Arceus builds and the Lugia are the ones immediately.
Yeah, Arceus being like probably the Flying Pikachu like Vulpix builds like pretty died out after Alex Szymanski did the win in EUIC with it. They've popped up now and again, but definitely the Umbreon build.
That was Azul at OCIC, right?
Was it not
Szymanski
at EUIC that one?
Oh yeah. Sorry. I was thinking about when Azul won with Arc Peak back in OCIC.
Gotcha. Yeah, and because that build of the deck's kind of fallen off because there's so many more different ways to attack in decks right now that going like I shut off all abilities or all basics is a lot harder to pull off. It's good against Lost Box, but then Lost Box has ways to kind of get around that.
Yeah.
With all the ropes and everything.
I thought Szymanski just played the Drowdon though. I didn't think he played the Peak.
In EUIC?
He played the Vulpix.
He played Vulpix against...
Yeah.
And that put in a lot of work against the Gardevoir builds.
Yeah.
So then Lugia sits in there as well. It's definitely fallen out of its current former glory as the BDIF from previous format. The lack of really good special energies put that out of that real top contention. Is it still like a deck worth playing with or testing with?
Lugia? Yeah, definitely.
I would like if you were to take this game seriously and you want to give yourself the best odd percentages, is either find a group or maybe a partner and take a deck that you're potentially thinking about and throw it through the 50 caliber, right? Like the top 5 decks, 10 games, look at the data, um, how close each loss and each win was, and you know the lines and the outs.
So the 5th deck then, because we've got Gardevoir, we've got Lost Box, the kind of 2 big builds, Turbo and probably Kyogre. Arc Piles, probably Arc Dura and Arc Giratina.
Probably Turbo and Giratina, right? Are you including?
Yeah, Turbo Giratina, sorry. Yeah. Turbo Tina. And then Arceus Piles being Dura and Tina. And then the 5th deck. What's the 5th deck? Is that Shin Pao? Or is that Inteleon Worship?
It's probably Shen Power Mew, to be honest.
I would argue Mew first over Shen Pao.
Mew.
I'd probably put Wug Trio above all of them.
Okay.
Incorrect. But that's fine. You're trying. So do you do both Mews, fusion and also non-fusion?
No. Well, I don't know with Spiritomb if I don't think anybody's really playing the DT build anymore.
I think you're right, actually.
Yeah, I don't think you're legally allowed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was what's their name? Nate Doyle got top 16 with Fusion Mew with a single Meloetta plus Ice Cube.
Yep.
Which seemed like a good call.
Yeah. I think that's just the build probably going forward.
Yeah, you probably take this and build from there. His card choice in a couple things was interesting, but definitely
it looks like
the
almost
start.
An exact copy of the list from the that won the which event was it? The Indonesia Championship, or Indonesia or Singapore, somewhere over there.
It's close. It's similar. There's a couple differences, like namely cleansing gloves.
Yeah. There's a couple, but it's pretty similar.
It's not identical, but close. Yeah, totally. I think that would definitely be taking this list, just kind of rolling with that one to play with, would make the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then potentially, if you want to throw in a 6th deck, is that Shen Pao?
I think so. I think it has one of those abilities to... It can be consistent, right? Like, Irida is one of the better water supporters, and so you're likely always going to be seeing, like, a pretty consistent Shen Pao with the Braxcalibur on 2. So, like, it's something to keep in mind, but I don't necessarily know if... It's tough because its placements are decent, but it doesn't necessarily perform as well. Like, it's good, but I would be surprised to ever see it take down an event. So it's one of those decks I would playtest against to have a matchup knowledge, but I don't necessarily know if I would ever play the deck.
It's the classic bridesmaid deck, where it's always the bridesmaid, but never the bride.
Yeah.
So it's getting close, but never taking it.
Yeah, because it still has a couple good matchups, like mainly probably Lugia and the Arceus decks. As long as you don't get Judge Pathed out of the game.
Which is also an argument for Miraidon.
Yeah.
Can also take those matchups arguably easier. Because you don't need Braxcalibur to get set up. You can just start swinging because Electric Generator basically does Braxcalibur.
That's true for sure. I think the one thing that Chen Pao is going for that Miraidon doesn't is probably just the spread ability with Greninja. But other than that, they seem pretty similar.
Yeah, you've got yellow Miraidon and blue Miraidon, so you got to pick your poison.
Yeah, I think Miraidon's early turns are usually a lot stronger. The Braxcalibur, I feel like, is a little bit better than the Miraidon a couple turns into the game. But they do both just kind of peter out eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems really hard to take those last couple of prizes.
So if you want to kind of expand this a little bit more to make sure you're covering more bases, let's say you're really going for a push for this season that's just starting, a couple decks probably to look out for. Inteleon should probably be somewhere in that rotation. I don't I personally don't think it's still going to be that good. It's got good matchups, but it's got some like pretty polarizing ones in terms of like, I don't know how it beats Lugia.
Yeah,
That seems like a hard matchup. Same thing with Arceus.
And Mew seems horrendous, especially after they just don't play Drapion in there anymore.
Mm-hmm. So then that's something probably worth testing, but maybe not put a ton of time into.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't play it to some like big event or some like a regional, but if you have a pretty good handle on like your locals meta, like a lot of people are playing Gardevoir or Lost Box, I think it could be a really good play.
Totally. Then birds. Does birds get into testing, or is that a meme?
I'd say it's good to test against. I think you should know how to beat it just in case you come across it. If we do see it just like die off, then you probably don't worry about it. But for now, I think it's something you should test against.
And then it's come up a couple of times. Funny enough, Darkrai. That's meme, right?
No, yeah, it's a meme. I wouldn't worry about Darkrai. I think the only deck that cares about Darkrai is like maybe Guardy. So like, if you're going into a meta where you understand they're likely all going to be Gardevoir decks, maybe you could play it.
But does it even have a super good matchup into Guardy? Because you're just getting
weakness.
You're getting one shot to
against
the baby Gardevoirs. So you basically need boss like every turn.
Yeah, and that's not impossible to get.
Yeah, but then like on the last turn they'll just take their Gardevoir out of play with like something like Collapse if they're playing the matchup well. Or something.
Who's testing the dark box matchup for
you don't have to because
right?
you auto win it. I don't think it's a.
I'm just thinking it out. I think the only good matchup it has is Mew. I personally don't think Gardevoir's a good matchup for it.
So just hit 5 Mew in a row and you'll get top 8 every time.
Yeah.
Seems like it.
But what is a deck is Regidrago.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's something that we've been playtesting. And we can kind of get into some of our playtesting data.
There was a couple day twos.
Yeah, Regidrago did win the juniors division of NAIC.
Yeah. Drake
piloted it to beat Gardevoir in that matchup, playing the Mewtwo V Union Engine. So the Noivern EX put in a lot of work in that matchup, denying the Luminous or the reversal energy. Thank you. Denying the stadium to bump off the path.
Yeah,
it looked really impressive. It looked like it had a pretty good handle on the Gardevoir matchup.
They were also running the Giratina V, which has the snipe for the bench. So
Garchomp.
I would assume that came up a couple times. Garchomp came up a couple times in order to actually like remove a couple specific Guardy pieces or even a annoying Lost Box engine piece or two.
Yeah, I think it can do well. I think it's something you could test with or test against, but I guess we'll just have to see.
I think it will be good eventually.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd play it personally.
Not yet.
Yeah.
We need a better engine for it.
Yeah, we might get there. We'll have to see what we get in future sets.
Double Dragon Energy.
We are getting the Obsidian Flame, and it's got Charizard.
So it's a dark type, though.
Which is dark. Yeah, it's dark type. But it could have a dragon in there. You never know.
Yeah, that's
it takes one interesting terrestrialized dragon type Pokemon to really make that deck pop off, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can get something cool, that deck has potential.
I don't think that deck is missing dragon attackers because we have a pretty good gambit.
The attackers are fine. It's how to power it up.
Yeah, that's the piece we're missing is an advantage engine. We have the Hydreigon that came out recently, which is the stage 2. I believe it's once per turn or on Evo it attaches some number of energy. So we have the engine there, but it's terrible on its own. So you wouldn't necessarily run it. Like the ability is there, but it's not worth a stage 3 or stage 2 line in the deck.
Yeah. At that point, you're basically playing Chen Pao.
Mm-hmm.
Like Fortress is an option, but
then you're
going behind on
That's an option I've been testing. I actually put together a couple builds I've been trying out for Regidrago using instead of the Arc, it's going with Fortress, and it's not terrible. You start on a deficit for prizes, which is fine. You were already probably doing that anyways with the older builds, but being able to power up 2 Dragos at once is pretty good. But if you ever go second, you're screwed. It's rough if you have to like pass to their turn 2 where they can attack and all you have is a Pineco and a Regidrago or two. It's really brutal, and I can't really find a way to fix it because also putting down path with like Ionos and Judges, it's not that great because you have no real way to remove your own paths, which means you're locking out your Fortress from being able to use its ability. And so it's just, there's some weird conflictions because right now I'm playing it with kind of like a control strategy where I set them to 4 and then I can Judge or Iono them and then have a path down. But you have to do it after you've Fortressed, so you can't stagger on the Fortress line. So it's kind of like already with how the RCs works, but the RCs don't give a prize. It's a lot of things to juggle. You have a bunch of plates you're balancing. And so far it has not been worth the payoff.
So someone was actually playing that the other day in one of the tournaments I was playing in. And I don't recall how it did. I'm assuming not well.
0-3 drop.
Like, it feels like a 50-50 deck or not.
They went 6-2-0.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure they took
They got
6th
6th
place.
They were top
Yeah.
8.
Okay. I'm going to have to pop a
I'll send you
peek
the
at what
list.
they were trying. Cool.
I'll send you the list.
What
What
have
else
you
have you been testing?
Yeah, what have you else been testing?
I've been doing the Arctura, obviously.
What?
I played against DJ a number of times. Gosh, man. Tina is a hard matchup. Tina just gives Arceus just the hardest time, and I'm not entirely sure the right path to solve it. But man, does that deck feel good to play.
The
Yeah.
That
Arctura?
deck will never not be... Yeah, Arctura. Just, you're always going to have some answers. As long as you can stick an Arceus and get an energy in play, you're rolling. And that's where it's like, a lot of the decks I've been seeing right now are switching up a little bit. I don't have the Lumineon V in there. I probably want to throw that back in. And then some lists have been throwing in the Radiant Alakazam, which feels fine. It seems okay. It's not the worst. I kind of almost want it to be Gardevoir for the Tina matchups, because Tina seems like it's going to just continue to be more and more popular. So it's like, it's those kind of tech pieces I've been looking out for. I feel like the rest of the list is pretty solidified. Spirit Tomb's been making its rounds. That one feels pretty meta dependent, but not bad as well. And then the rest of the lists are pretty straightforward. You're not looking at a ton of innovation outside of just, do you play the path of the fourth Lost City? Do you play an extra special energy like Luminous or the single strike to do a little bit of extra damage, or do you keep it the basic energy? So that list has been performing pretty well, and I've been very happy with just being able to boss with the Umbreon, plus also play a supporter. Just feels good. Because that definitely feels like the hardest matchup. Everything else, it feels like you have a decent plan for. Like Gardevoir, you just kind of keep attacking, deny them with some, like, if they're not running switch cards, which I don't think a lot of the Gardevoirs are, the mean look Umbreon lock is funny and exists. And don't be afraid to use that, because it's super, like, if you can win the game 1 off of them decking out because you're just using your Umbreon to lock them into place so they can't retreat. It's not 100% consistent, but it is definitely an option if they've played into a lot of their resources that they shouldn't have. You can kind of get them a gotcha moment there. Mew is interesting. Feels like maybe a somewhat harder matchup, but I've not seen enough of the Fusion Mew locally or played against it enough to know quite where it lands. Feels like it's not a huge issue.
Does that Fusion Strike energies go through Dura's attack or ability?
No, it does not.
Okay.
But Path stops it. So, if they're
Gotcha.
doing the Path build, that's where it's a little bit tricky. Which most are running Path. Yeah, that's been a lot of what I'm playing, is that list. I was looking at Shen Pao. I was pretty hyped to start, and then kind of digging more into it. It's like, this is just Blue Miraidon. I think I'm good.
But Rain Dance.
Rain Dance is cool. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Archie's Toys. I love me some Rain Dance. I love me some Energy Acceleration. I've got the GLC Metal and GLC Water decks running that acceleration. But I feel like in this current meta, you have to be faster than a Stage 2.
Gardevoir would like to know your location.
Give us back Archie's.
Yeah, but the thing with Gardevoir is their Stage 1 and Stage 2 are both really good.
They
And
are.
Raxcalibur is just okay.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a good card, but then the Frigibacks Is it Frigibax? No. What's the middle one?
It's is it Frigibax? I don't know. Gonna be completely honest. I have no idea.
Do people even run the stage?
No, they don't.
You sure don't.
That's fair. But yeah, so in that case, you're relying on the rare candy plus the which I mean that's just an Irida, right? So it's not that bad. But then you're using your supporter to set you up for energy acceleration and not drawing into cards you need to attack or win the game with, which is what Shen Pao is for. But then you're kind of fighting yourself a little bit on getting set up, and it's just slow, slower than it
weird.
Probably needs to.
So it's Arctibax, if anyone was wondering. Yeah.
Thank you. My testing, I'm pretty confident I've found, the deck that I'm going to play. At least as of recently, I've been testing a lot of the, I wouldn't say grass box, but it's a Fortress EX is the power up engine with the Trevenant V from Astral Radiance that does the 120, discards a card, and Wu Chin as the 2 attackers after the Fortress pops. And it's been doing really well. To be fair, I've played against a lot of Mew and Chin Pao in my online testing early stages, but I've gotten pretty consistently the double pop into Iona to 2 to discard a card, and the opponent draw passes, or even if they do get like a Colress Experiment or like an Irida, their hand size is so low that they can't stack up their cards to retaliate attack. And is it Bravery Charm? The charm that gets 58.
Yep.
Yeah, 50 extra HP. Like that's been super super clutch. And I do run a copy of a Penny in there to be able to pick up the damaged Pokemon if it doesn't get one shot, and go in with another attacker.
Yeah, Charm seems like a card that probably should be more played than it is.
No, it seems fine. Like, there's not a ton of basic attackers right now, right? Like, your most of your stuff is Dragonite, which is already mostly one-shotting or being one-shot. And like, not in a way that I don't think the 50 makes up a difference depending on what's one-shotting it for the most part. Sableye isn't necessarily caring about having more health. It's already going to die. And I mean, they don't need that card anyways. It's just, it's mostly dead. They'd rather have like a pump on their Dragonite. But then like other decks, like what does the extra HP really do for you when most engines are stage 1s or 2s with the Charm not doing anything for it?
Well, like, against the Arceus decks, right? If they do have one that's set up, being able to dodge the belt, if it has DTE, belt does 210, the Trevenant gets knocked out if it doesn't have the Charm on it.
Well, Charm only affects basics, right?
Correct. He's talking about being attacked by an Arceus.
Yeah, Trevenant V. Is it Trevenant V?
Trevenant V is a basic, yeah, from Asteroid.
Yeah. So my point was less about like the specific build and more about the concept of like Bravery Charm's not played enough. Whereas I think it's played enough in the sense that there's not a ton of like big basic attacker decks or decks that rely on a single basic attacker.
There's some lists that are cooking with like the Raikou plus like all the different dogs in a list.
Yeah.
With like Luminous Energy and like.
Oh, they don't even play Charm in that deck.
Yeah, that they don't, do they?
Well, yeah, because the spots that's taken up in those decks are the stones, right? Those aggressive decks.
True.
That a Forest Hill Stone. So yeah, in that sense, Bravery Charm. While Stone's in the format that V Pokemon won't utilize from it, but definitely going forward as Pokemon starts to print basic EX Pokemon, right, that don't get the benefits from the stones, you could see Charm being a good tool later down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's been our playtesting. Speaking of playtesting, Trenton, you've been doing some online tournaments as a way to also get some good data. You played a couple recently this past couple days. How have those been going for you?
Well, I was on a hot streak for a while there. Not doing as well. I still have got a top 8 this week. But it wasn't with Lost Box. It was with Inteleon Urshifu. So you could say that I kind of predicted what was gonna win, sort of, not really, but that was fun. I'm never playing the deck again because in top 8 I got absolutely destroyed by Lost Box.
As Inteleon?
Yeah, game 1.
Oof.
I went second, which is, I mean, you should still be fine, but they went crazy. I went first. And I only had like one bench Pokemon. It was my Remoraid, and they got the turn 1 Dragonite.
Ooh.
And kind of I didn't get like any VIP pass, or I just had the one Remoraid down. It was kind of nothing I could do from there. And then game 2, I started Metacham and a bunch of useless like supporters and stuff in my hand. And then I played like my research the next turn, and I drew like half my VIP passes, a bunch of other stuff. So
how reliant is that deck on VIP pass turn 1?
It feels pretty reliant, but it feels like you hit it most of the time, because if you're going second, you have supporter, Squawkabilly, so like Irida just finds it. Then you have Squawkabilly, of course, and 4 Sealstone. Turn 1, you just have like 4 Sealstone drawing it, or Squawkabilly. But if you miss the Squawkabilly, which I did in both those games, it feels pretty bad.
So what I'm hearing is you need to ban VIP Battle Pass.
I already made the call that like decks that are doing well usually do it off the back of VIP Pass that don't deserve to do well.
Yeah. No, I think the card is just really, it's like you miss it and you're just like, it feels like you miss it and you're like, it's not just like one turn behind, you're like multiple turns behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think that was the only Lost Box I played that event, to be honest. But yeah, as soon as I got the Squawkabilly out, and most of the time you hit like a VIP pass. Most games when you're getting the Squawkabilly, you're getting a full bench turn 1. And it just feels like from there you can just kind of like, you can take the multiple turns with Metacham, do a ton of spread with Alakazam and Inteleon and Urshifu, and it feels like you have a lot of good matchups.
All right, well, hopefully you can break your top 8 curse here soon. Keep making it almost there.
I saw I was against Lost Box, the one Lost Box in top 8 there, and I was like, all right, this is the one. This is the one. But still,
this was not the one.
It was not the one.
Something I wanted to mention too with online events. I was watching Daniel play, and he went up against, I think it's in his first round, his opponent deliberately stalled for time, and then caused the match to become a draw.
Yeah.
That seems like a really effective method to pull out draws.
So,
and the TOs didn't do anything about it. So it seems like no, or did they? I don't. I didn't actually see the resolution.
They gave him the win.
Cool.
Yeah. But whatever. So I played in that same event, right? And that event had very, very short rounds. The rounds were 25 minutes. With also a check-in, like a 5-minute check-in, I think. So players could like wait the 5 minutes out to check in, and then you only have 20 minutes to play your match, give or take a couple minutes to add each other on TCGL, and get the match starting, and then you're left with about 15 minutes to actually play the game, which is
wild.
Yeah, it is not enough. Most tournaments. So I've actually never. That event was the first event online I've played out of like all of them that I've ever got a draw. So I mean, I play pretty fast as well, but most of them are like, they give you like around 30 to 35 minutes at least. So, and with the 30 minutes, it's usually they don't have a check-in, or it's like a way shorter check-in or something. So, yeah, it just felt really, really, it was really weird how, it felt like in that event you could kind of just stall for time to get, there was no reason to, which was weird why someone would stall, because in that event also ties were worth nothing, which was also dumb. So it was like I basically tied 2 of my rounds, and I was like, well, I kind of just scrubbed out. There's nothing you can do about that.
That's a strange structure.
Yeah, because historically, 3 points for a win, 0 for a loss, 1 for a tie.
Yeah.
But that 0 points seems absurd.
And that was like you can tell because that was like the first event I've ever like really tied in online too, and I tied twice, so just crazy.
Maybe not run that one back.
Yeah, I mean it was probably a fun event, but I think they need to definitely adjust those timers.
Yeah, the judges did seem cool. They reached out to Daniel to resolve the issue with his first round opponent, and then while he was streaming, they noticed he was streaming, and so they gave him some codes to give out to people. So if he, sometimes they do give those out, and if you watch one of us stream, we might have codes to give out for packs online.
Yeah, so maybe Daniel could shoot him a DM and tell him to up the match timers. But,
his new best friend.
Yeah. But most of the events, that doesn't seem like a problem. Then again, I do play really fast, so.
True. Yeah, if you have to think, it makes things harder.
Mm-hmm.
And then final thing we wanted to cover is there's a new announcement for an online client called Twinleaf. There's not a ton of information, but there's a group of folk getting together to basically create a new playtest/playing client. We've seen kind of a demo of what the board looks like. It's pretty rudimentary. I don't believe the link is up anymore for it. But the potential for this to take off is extremely high, especially for playtesting.
Yeah, with the state TCGL is in right now.
With live how bad it is, I think this might be a pretty big thing for a lot of the very heavy competitive players, or even mildly competitive players. Wink. And I'm curious, would you guys prefer if this was a simulator, so just like live or online, or a manual program?
I don't think there's a question it's manual. Like, manual allows you to do so much more in the way of playtesting. It's insane. Because you're able to wind plays back, roll, like, ooh, actually, what does this line look like? Or what if I played this line and drew in this order and did this instead? Or actually, let me put this back, put this to Pokemon up differently. There's so many more versatile lines you can test with if it is manual as opposed to automated.
I personally would prefer. I'm not sure if there's going to be like a actual matchmaking system, but I would prefer it to be actually automated, but with so they would have it like if you're doing like a friendly battle, then it does give you that feature. Maybe they allow us to like have a thing we select to make it manual, or just if it's a friend battle, we can like rewind. If like both players select to rewind, you can rewind. If they add a matchmaking, which I'm not sure if they will or something, but I think they should have it like automated, but give us the option to make it manual.
So there's a couple of clients I play for other games where it's automated, but you can switch to a manual mode to tweak, like if something has some number of life or the wrong counter or something.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I think the swap between both. Personally, I think having an automated system would be a little too much for an online simulator, especially unless they're going to start with like how TCG Live is doing it, where you have access to standard and then standard plus, and then like a third of expanded, and then half of it, like slowly roll out all the automation, or get really smart about their engine implementation and just have effects based stuff, like blah 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 blah. So my guess is realistically they're going to be doing manual, but I could see them trying to roll up automation eventually.
Yeah.
Right, and the benefit of manual is, they're able to get this resource out to the player base as quickly as possible, and really make a name for themselves as, the program to test on for pro Pokemon play, or if you're a player that, seeks, coaching, which is a great thing, you can link up virtually, so. No, I like manual. I do like manual.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Any other final topics we want to hit before we wrap this up?
Yes, Trent, where can we check you out on Twitch for these online gameplays?
You can check me out on twitch.tv/WatermanTrenton.
Waterman Trenton?
Yep.
And then right now you're mainly playing in the more known events, right? The Limitless?
Yep.
So,
Miss playing in tournaments every day.
okay, yeah, super competitive field, great player.
Yep.
If you want to check out Daniel, he's at Frost Onyx, twitch.tv/FrostOnyx. You can check him out there.
We won't promise perfect gameplay, but we're pretty mildly competitive.
It'll be at least mildly competitive.
We'll make day 2 or we'll be
DQ.
DQ'd.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, rate, whatever platform you're on, to give us a good, if you like it, thumbs up. If you don't, go down. If you have any questions, comments, any thoughts about the topics we discussed, please feel free to leave them down below. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.